In the midst of our 25th anniversary celebration, Daniel, who had been unhappy for years, started to smile faintly as he stood in front of our gathered friends and family and said, "I want a divorce." His words landed like a grenade, and our adult children, Thomas and Jennifer, gaped at him while their friends froze in mid-sip, their eyes darting between us in the restaurant's private area. Something flickered across Daniel's face in surprise, possibly disappointment at my composure. He had expected tears, pleading, or public humiliation. The dining room, which I had decorated with silver anniversary decorations and pictures from our decades together, felt suddenly empty. I simply nodded and replied, "I understand completely." Instead, I turned to each shocked guest and sincerely thanked them for attending what had become our last celebration as a couple. "My name is Marlene Griffin, and I am 57 years old. I have dedicated the last 25 years of my life to my marriage, raising our children, running our Richmond, Virginia, home, and helping Daniel through 3 job changes, 2 financial catastrophes, and a serious health scare." As the guests awkwardly scattered, muttering condolences and pointing daggers at Daniel, I approached him with the composure of someone who had made peace with a hurricane long before it hit shore. "You'll want to call them first thing in the morning," I said, slipping a single business card into his hand. His eyes widened as he read the information. I was standing in an elegant restaurant watching my husband try to blindside me with our divorce. I saw Daniel's confident expression crumble as the first hint that something was wrong pierced his self-assurance about what I'd made. The embossed card's name was Rebecca Stone Esquire, one of the most feared divorce attorneys in Virginia. "Why would you have this?" he asked, his voice suddenly less certain. I simply smiled, patted his arm, and walked away to hug our confused children over their shoulders. I'm positive he was unaware of the fact that 6 months prior, when I was searching his desk drawer for our property tax statement, I had found a lease agreement for an apartment in Shako Bottom, our city's hip downtown area. 2 days later, when his phone lit up during dinner, I caught a glimpse of a string of unsettlingly private texts between him and a co-worker, and that was just the beginning of what I knew. I had spent 6 months meticulously recording every detail of Daniel's betrayal by the time he dropped the divorce bombshell at our anniversary party. He believed he was ending our marriage on his terms, but I had been planning my exit strategy with military precision since Valentine's Day, when my grandmother used to tell me, "Trust but verify." I completely believed in Daniel, who was mostly disregarded during my marriage. We met when I was 30, and he was 32. We both worked at Falwin Security, me in human resources, and him as a rising star in sales. Our courtship was intense, and within a year, we were married with a prenuptial agreement that protected us both in the event that things went wrong. 2 lovely children followed, and I finally took a step back from my career to manage our expanding family, while Daniel's sales career took off, moving from Falwin to Brightville Mining, and then to Evercan Motors, climbing the corporate ladder. With each leap, I supported every decision, every late night, and every weekend business trip, even as our kids grew up and needed their father at dance recitals and soccer games, which he unavoidably missed. "Your dad is working hard for all of us," I would say. Tell them I believe it myself. And he did provide well for our colonial home in the West End neighborhood, private schools for the children, and comfortable family vacations twice a year. But in retrospect, I can see the signs I missed. The growing criticism of my appearance in comparison to the dynamic professionals he worked with, the diminishing physical intimacy explained, and the gradual emotional distance. My friends would tell me that it's normal for a marriage to change after 20 years due to stress and aging. But what wasn't normal were the increasing number of business dinners that left his collar smelling of perfume I didn't wear. Or the second cell phone I found in his briefcase while packing it for a hospital stay following his gallbladder surgery 3 years ago. I convinced myself that these were misunderstandings because the alternative was too painful to contemplate. However, on Valentine's Day this year, Daniel completely forgot the holiday, which is not uncommon in recent years. He claimed it was only for international clients, but that mysteriously vanished after his recovery. When I brought up our dinner, he claimed a last-minute client emergency. Reservation. I spent the evening by myself looking through old photo albums, wondering how we had become so different from the couple in those faded photos. The following morning, I decided to file our tax paperwork early and needed our property records, which is how I discovered a lease agreement for an apartment on East Carey Street signed 2 months prior, with Daniel's signature clearly visible, tucked between home insurance documents and car titles, as a down payment on a 1-bedroom apartment that cost almost a third of his monthly take-home pay. That revelation would completely alter how I approached our 25th wedding anniversary. I spent 3 hours that day sitting in my car outside the apartment complex, unable to decide whether to confront him right away or to act as though I had never seen the lease for the sophisticated brick building with its floor-to-ceiling windows and rooftop deck. We need to be more careful with spending this year. Daniel had warned me only weeks before I found the lease, because the market is unstable, and windows made fun of all I believed I knew about our financial status. However, despite the kitchen's alleged financial constraints, he managed to secure a $20,800 monthly rental in the city's most sought-after neighborhood. When I finally drove home, I made 2 decisions that would change the course of my life. First, I would not confront Daniel until I fully understood the situation. Second, I would protect myself by obtaining all available evidence before taking any action. The following morning, while Daniel was at the gym, I looked at his phone, which he thought was clever, and he thought of, long ago I had noticed that he unlocked his fingerprint lock with his right thumb while he was sleeping. I carefully pressed his thumb to the sensor and checked his messages, which confirmed my worst fears. He and his coworker Jessica Palmer had been involved for at least 18 months. Their texts were explicit, full of references to our place and plans for a future together once he handled things. While reading their conversations at home, I discovered that Jessica, 34, had recently gone through a divorce and was employed in marketing at Everkin Motors. It seemed that she had persuaded Daniel that their May-December relationship was his ticket to excitement and youth again. My hands trembled as I took pictures of important exchanges using my own phone, making sure to record timestamps and contact information. That night, as Daniel kissed my cheek absently before diving into work emails, I found it difficult to keep my composure and fought the urge to scream and demand answers to 25 years of memories that had been twisted by the knowledge that our recent history had been built on lies. The physical pain of betrayal was overwhelming, a vice grip around my chest that made breathing difficult. I smiled and gave him his favorite evening bourbon instead of throwing his deceit in his face, which was almost too much to handle. Working late again? Without glancing up, he said, "Don't wait up." In response to my casual question, "Quarterly reports are coming up." I nodded and withdrew to our bedroom, where I gave myself 10. After crying silently for a few minutes, I called my oldest friend, Valerie, and asked her for the name of the best divorce lawyer in Richmond. She replied that I needed complete confidentiality, and 2 days later, I sat across from Rebecca Stone in her downtown office and laid out the scant evidence I had so far. The eminent lawyer, with her silver-streaked bob and sharp eyes, listened. Without before speaking, I paused to say what would become my motto for the next few months. "We won't just build a case, Marlene. We'll build an ironclad fortress. But first we need to understand exactly what we're up against." Rebecca's advice was clear. Be an intelligence operative in my own marriage. Document everything. Follow the money. build a complete picture of our marital assets and Daniel's, and activities before giving him any hint that I was aware of. His betrayal. She advised that the element of surprise is your greatest advantage because the moment he realizes you're aware, he'll start hiding assets and creating his own story. Thus, I started living a double life on the outside, managing our home, attending business functions on Daniel's arm, and organizing our next. Beneath that facade, I became a methodical investigator who documented every aspect of our personal and financial lives. I began with our finances, as Daniel had always handled the investments while I oversaw the household accounts. I told him that I wanted to learn more about investing for myself because I needed to understand the full extent of our portfolio. Our financial advisor, Harold Wilson, was initially hesitant to share details with me until I gently reminded him that, as Daniel's spouse, I had the legal right to do so. He dismissed the request with condescending amusement, but in the end, he granted it by sharing our financial advisor's contact information. Just don't make any changes without first consulting me. After I expressed concerns about strange money movements, Harold became surprisingly open. Well, there have been some significant withdrawals over the past year and a half, Harold acknowledged. But I assumed Daniel discussed these with you. He hadn't. The withdrawals totaled almost $320,000 in money that appeared to have been transferred from our joint investment accounts to a different company, Griffin Consulting LLC, which Daniel set up as a side gig. Harold explained that it was for consulting work, apart from his primary job, and I had no idea that it was a shell company, which Rebecca later clarified was probably established to divert marital assets from our shared portfolio. I took pictures of every document. After Harold shared account numbers, dates, and amounts, I proceeded to access our home computer. Since Daniel wasn't very tech-savvy, he used the same passwords for most accounts, which were variations of our children's birthdays and our anniversary date. The irony wasn't lost on me, though, because when I used Jen52719 to access his email account, I discovered information that supported my suspicions and disclosed fresh betrayals, including emails with a realtor about buying a condo in Charlotte, North Carolina, an offer letter from Halra Audio, a Charlotte-based company, dated 3 months prior, flight confirmations for weekend excursions he claimed were golf outings with clients, and numerous emails to Jessica about their future. He wrote in one message, "Once the anniversary party is over, I'll handle the divorce quickly." The timing of the Charlotte move worked out perfectly, and he would announce our divorce at the anniversary party, portraying himself as the sincere husband who had simply fallen out of love, but had politely waited for our milestone anniversary before doing so. Marlene would be devastated, but she would move on. I sat at our desk reading their well-thought-out plans to destroy my life and felt something harden inside of me. This wasn't just an affair or a midlife crisis. This was a comprehensive campaign to get rid of me with little financial repercussion to himself after I had moved on. He would then move to Charlotte with Jessica, taking his new job at Hestra and living in the condominium they had already chosen together. I committed all of my adult life to helping him succeed, and that night, I silently promised Daniel Griffin that he wouldn't know what hit him. With Rebecca's help, I deepened my research because I needed to know not only what Daniel was planning, but also what legal weaknesses existed in his plan. Our prenuptial agreement had been clear-cut in the event of Rebecca pointed out right away that there was a crucial infidelity clause that states that if either party has an extramarital affair, they lose their right to certain protections. Most significantly, she explained, the injured spouse is entitled to a significantly larger portion of the assets that were brought into the marriage, while assets accumulated during the marriage would be divided equally. Larger percentage of marital assets obtained during the years of infidelity. The key would be demonstrating when the affair started. If I could show that Daniel and Jessica's relationship lasted years instead of months, I might be able to assert rights to over half of our marital assets, including parts of his stock options and retirement accounts. I hired a private investigator. William Jacobs was an infidelity specialist, and his services weren't inexpensive, but I took money out of my personal savings account that I had saved up from my sporadic freelance HR consulting work, which Daniel was unaware of. William verified that Daniel and Jessica had been dating for at least 2 years, and he gave pictures of them eating together, going into and out of the apartment, and traveling to. The most damning evidence came from interviews William conducted with Everken Motors employees. According to 3 different sources within the company, their relationship was well known as early as the spring of 2023. One former executive assistant kept a thorough work diary that mentions them spending time alone in his office with Daniel on weekends when he claimed to be on golf trips. William found the assistant, who had been fired shortly after allegedly for performance reasons, and she was more than willing to share her records and testify if necessary. She was still resentful of her abrupt termination, which she felt was planned to keep her quiet. Armed with this information, Rebecca added workplace harassment. The door had locked on several occasions. As the weeks went by, I kept accumulating evidence while putting on a flawless front of ignorance. If necessary, we could suggest that Everken Motors could be held legally liable for permitting a senior executive to have an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate. She clarified that this is leverage we may not need to use, but it's useful to have. Knowing that it was in line with what Daniel had told Jessica, I talked excitedly about the next 25 years with friends and family. I even occasionally started physical contact, which obviously made Daniel uneasy, but he couldn't deny it without drawing suspicion. Every time he made up an excuse for going to the apartment or Charlotte for work, I just grinned and told him 3 weeks prior to our anniversary, I made a significant discovery while backing up family photos to our cloud storage. I discovered a folder Daniel had ostensibly created by mistake in our shared account that contained explicit photographs of him. I nodded sympathetically every time he complained about money while covertly funding his double life. I instantly sent the pictures of Jessica and Rebecca together in the apartment, which were regularly dated over the previous 2 years, to Rebecca and William, who confirmed that they offered unmistakable visual evidence of the timeline of infidelity. The last piece fell into place, and Rebecca assured me at our most recent meeting prior to the anniversary celebration that the moment he makes his move, we'll react with such force that he won't. The anniversary party was my masterwork of deception. I chose the grand ballroom of the Jefferson Hotel, set up a string quartet, and created an elegant evening. I left her office feeling oddly at ease after months of investigation, documentation, and strategic planning. I had no choice but to wait for Daniel to set his trap, not realizing he was walking right into mine. Celebrating a lifetime of partnership, the invitations were sent to 60 of our closest friends and family members on ivory cardstock with silver embossing. I watched Daniel's face as I showed him the final guest list, and he said, "This seems excessive." Obviously uneasy with the scope of a celebration that he knew would end in destruction. 2 years deserves something special, I said innocently. The evening came, and I was wearing a silver gown that had required 3 fittings to get just right. Daniel appeared more and more upset as guests arrived, congratulating us on this momentous occasion. Our children, Thomas from Seattle and Jennifer from Boston, had flown in. and both made heartfelt toasts about how they had grown up witnessing their parents' love and cooperation. "You've shown us what commitment really means," Jennifer said, lifting her glass as Daniel moved uneasily next to me during dinner. I saw Daniel checking his watch, his expression becoming more composed with each hour, and I knew he was adhering to the schedule he had agreed upon with Jessica to make the announcement, after I watched his practiced smile and the rehearsed casualness in his posture as he allowed himself to leave with dignity before dessert, while guests were still there to support Marlene. I wondered how many times he must have imagined this moment, his declaration of independence, his new beginning at my expense. He started steadily. "I want to be honest with everyone here tonight after much reflection." He paused, looking around the room, and then continued, "I've been unhappy for years." The practiced line fell flat in the elegant ballroom. "I want a divorce." The audience gasped, and Jennifer dropped her champagne glass, shattering it on the hardwood floor. Thomas half got up from his chair, his face battling confusion and anger. Our friends stared in shock, but I was prepared because I had practiced this moment as thoroughly as Daniel had. I just nodded and said, "I understand completely." The confusion on his face was worth every moment of the past 6 months' deception. He had anticipated tears. I think we should thank everyone for coming. I continued to stand smoothly and speak to our shocked guests. "This has been a wonderful celebration of the past, even as we move toward different futures one by one." He may have even pleaded, but instead, he received calm acceptance that clearly disrupted his narrative of being the reasonable party bringing an unhappy marriage to an end. Daniel stood clumsily by the gift table, looking increasingly unsure, as his dramatic moment turned into awkward social navigation. When the last guests had left, except for our children, who waited tearfully by the door, I approached Daniel with practiced composure and said, "You'll get what you're after." I hugged each departing guest, accepting their whispered condolences and confused support with gracious smiles. I slipped Rebecca's business card into his hand and said, "I want to call them first thing in the morning." He stared at the card, slowly realizing that it was Rebecca Stone, the divorce lawyer. I confirmed that she is very picky about her clients, but she made an exception for me 6 months ago. The blood drained from his face as comprehension set in. "Don't worry about coming home tonight," I added. As he stood there stunned, I turned to our kids and put my arms through theirs, saying, "Let's go have that cake at home. I think we've had enough celebration for one evening." Daniel's lawyer called at 7:13 a.m., but I was pleased to see that my hair was changed this afternoon and that your essentials were packed in a suitcase at the coat check. "I think you have somewhere else to stay, don't you?" The morning after the voice said sternly, "I understand there's a situation we need to discuss. Please direct all communication to Rebecca Stone." I replied, following the script Rebecca, and I had prepared, "I'm already awake, having slept better than I've had in months. She's expecting your call by 9 a.m. Rebecca gave a call to report that Daniel was trying to limit the damage by making a rapid, large settlement offer, which was a blatant sign that he hadn't yet realized how prepared I was. "He's offering a 60-40 split of your current visible assets plus the house," she said. "Should I let him know we're just getting started?" "Certainly." At 11 a.m., at my request, a process server delivered the formal divorce papers to Daniel at Everken Motors headquarters during a board meeting. Daniel was leading the thick document, which included comprehensive evidence of his financial deception, infidelity, and plans to leave, in addition to my terms of 85% of the marital assets, the house, and significant alimony. 3 things happened quickly after noon in the state. Daniel's attorney called for an urgent meeting. Everett's human resources director summoned Daniel to their offices. Jessica Palmer cleared her desk, and she sobbed as she left the building. Rebecca met with Daniel and his attorney that afternoon, bringing the final bombshell, Williams's full investigative report with, "My client is prepared to contact Everkin's board directly regarding the company's failure to address this situation if we cannot reach a satisfactory agreement," Rebecca told the former Everkin employees, who provided witness statements about the inappropriate workplace relationship. "We also have documentation of the Griffin Consulting LLC shell company that was used to divert marital property, assets that raise tax irregularities that authorities may find intriguing." Daniel's attempt to take over our divorce story had fallen apart in less than a day. His attorney asked for a brief break, during which I imagine he broke some very unpleasant news to my husband of 25 years. The settlement talks were incredibly short, and Daniel was facing possible I received 85% of our marital assets, including full ownership of our home, his retirement accounts, and his investment portfolios. Daniel kept only his personal belongings, his car, and a single vehicle. Professional disgrace, tax investigations, and the total destruction of the narrative he had created about our marriage were all accepted on terms that were far beyond what even Rebecca had initially believed possible. The most satisfying aspect of the non-disclosure agreement was that Daniel would never publicly discuss the details of our divorce, effectively preventing him from fabricating a sympathetic story about our split in exchange for me agreeing not to contact him. The investment account was worth about 1/5 of our total net worth, and the alimony payments would continue for 10 years, guaranteeing my financial security well into retirement age. 2 days after our anniversary party, Jennifer and Thomas came for dinner. They were still in shock over the public dissolution of their parents' marriage, but they started to comprehend the situation after I shared a few details of Daniel's relationship with Jessica. Everett's board was open about his relationship with Jessica, but I made no promises about what information might reach them through other channels. Betrayal. "What kept you so composed during this whole ordeal?" "I would have strategically burned his clothes on the front lawn or something," Jennifer said, pouring another glass of wine. "I explained that your father never valued my knowledge, and that he only regarded me as the helpful wife, so that blind hole gave me the upper hand." Thomas shook. I smiled, feeling truly happy for the first time in months. At first, I didn't want retribution. I just wanted justice. But when I realized how thoroughly he had planned to dump me, I felt he needed to know exactly who he was dealing with. A month after the anniversary celebration, Daniel moved to Helstra Audio had lowered their offer after learning of the circumstances surrounding his departure from Everkin, and Charlotte, as planned alone, was much poorer and less professional. Jessica, it turned out, had lost interest once his financial prospects drastically changed, and the condominium they had chosen together was now beyond his means. In the meantime, I started the next. As I settled into my restored life, I thought about the irony of having closed a chapter of my life on my own terms, with resources, dignity, and the deep satisfaction of knowing that when put to the test, I had risen to the task with strength and wisdom I didn't know I possessed. That in an attempt to get rid of me, Daniel had accidentally allowed me to become more like myself than I had been in 25 years of union.